Majority Leader.
Yesterday afternoon, Treasury Secretary Yellen released a letter updating congressional leadership about their latest forecast regarding default. The Treasury's projection remains unchanged. The federal government is in danger of failing to pay its bills as soon as June 1st. Since last week's White House meeting, Democrat staff have in good faith held conversations with our Republican counterparts about the nation's fiscal future. The talks are separate but simultaneous to our responsibility to avoid default. Democrats will not use the threat of default to get what we want. Nobody should use default as a hostage. Nobody should say, unless you do this, then we default, because the consequences of default would be devastating for ordinary Americans. We talked through the weekend, we talked yesterday, and both sides, the staffs that is, are talking today as well. And later this afternoon, I will join President Biden, House Leader Jeffries, Speaker McCarthy, Leader McConnell at the White House. Democrats welcome a debate about this year's budget. For decades, both parties have regularly worked out their differences about spending and revenues throughout the appropriations process. That's what's happening right now, while we separately but simultaneously work to avoid default. And again, let me just repeat this because it's so important as we get closer to June 1st. Nobody should use default as a hostage. Nobody should say, unless you do this, then we default, because the consequences will be devastating for America. Default would almost certainly create another recession, kill more than 8 million jobs, send costs soaring on everything from mortgages, car payments, student loans, small business loans, and so much more. If you want to own a home one day, default would take that dream and run it through the shredder. If you want to protect your 401k, default would rob you of your livelihood. If you want to grow your small business or borrow student loans, or if you benefit from Social Security or Medicare, a default would be a nightmare scenario. We all know these things are fast approaching the closer we get to June 1st. Congress cannot, under any circumstances, fail its obligation to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. It is one of our highest obligations. Now on nominations and Senate business. Last night, we filed cloture on 3 more outstanding judicial nominees, 2 district court judges and a circuit court judge. Even as Senate Democrats proceed on our agenda to help working and middle-class families avoid default, we will not relent on filling the vacancies in our federal judiciary with qualified, mainstream, and diverse judges. Yesterday, we took a big step forward towards strengthening the bench with historic confirmation of Bradley Garcia, the first Latino ever to serve on the D.C. Circuit, the second most important court in the land. And the 3 judges we filed cloture on last night continue that effort. They are highly qualified and diverse candidates, both demographically and professionally. They will strengthen our federal judiciary and help the bench better reflect the diversity and dynamism of our country. Senate Democrats are going to keep working this week to advance these nominees, and I hope both sides can work together to move the process along quickly and in a bipartisan way. Today, the Senate is also busy off the floor. As we speak, the Senate Banking Committee is holding a very important hearing testimony from the former CEO and chairman of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank to examine the failures that led to their collapses. I want to thank Chairman Brown and all the members of the committee for holding this important hearing, because we need to get to the bottom of what went wrong with SVB and Signature Bank. The American people must have confidence that Congress can work across the aisle to hold bad actors in banking accountable. And that's why it's essential we hear directly from the CEOs of the failed institutions. I hope today's hearing brings us one step closer to bipartisan action on common sense banking oversight legislation that Americans rightfully demand. I yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.